we humans truly dislike it when we are alerted to the fact that we do not take our responsibility. We dislike it when we are presented with pictures and graphical explanations about where we didn't step in and where we didn't take or wanted to see our responsibility. Instead, we scream and yell at the ones that show us these facts and blame them for the extreme pictures and information. The point is, the abuse was there all along and we allowed it or even participated within it. But deep down, we knew we took part in it, one way or the other. But we do not like to see the nasty stuff. That's not us, we try to convince ourselves. But let's face it, we all have nastiness inside of us, and it doesn't go away while we ignore it, deny it, or refuse to take any responsibility for it. That only makes us liars. And currently the world is full of liars, which makes it hard to find real information. Once we do find the real information, we probably do not perceive it as real, since we're so used to lies. Lies that suit us to cover up the dark side of life. And it all starts already when we're young and mommy wants us to eat some meat. Most children do not even know that the meat on their plate once was a part of a living animal. Already as children we're taught to become disconnected from life. Adults see the slaughter of animals for consumption as bad information to share with their children. And of course, it isn't a pretty picture when you look into the meat industry. That would probably make us all stop eating meat. But it isn't it essential for a child to start and understand their world around them already at a young age? How many small children who do know where chickens come from ask if there's a chicken inside their egg when their parents present them an egg for consumption? Children do not like to kill and eat other living beings, and we adults are too afraid to share the bare truth with our weak-hearted children. We present veggies as a solution when the child grows up and refuses to eat meat when they themselves find out how cruel the meat industry is. Again, we adults show our disconnection with reality. The fact that veggies do not scream when they are cut or boiled alive doesn't mean it isn't living material we're dealing with, but pointing out that to our children and even to adults, that's probably too graphical and best to ignore. Later on, when we start exploring the world around us and nature in general, there are children that collect bugs to take care of or to study them. Most of the time the bugs end up dead because the child loses interest and forgets all about for instance, the ants that were sitting in a closed jar. We adults see this part of growing up, and only a few of us will point out to the child that it has to take its responsibility. Some kids take it even a step further and pull off legs or other body parts of the insect. We adults do not like to see this, as it reminds us of our own dark side, though we accept it and label it as exploring. If we would have taken our responsibility right here, we would have seen what was taking place within reality instead of acting in fear and ignoring the child's behavior. This child is so-called exploring, but it's already acting on its pre-programming of always feeling less than. And to compensate, the child plays God and determine the fate of the insect, even when it is taking bad care of the ants. The child wants to feel more, and the insect is a perfect little creature to oppress. But in fact, the child is oppressing his nasty feeling inside of feeling inferior to creation. So the child disconnects and separates itself from reality to overcome the fear of inferiority. There are also parents who go as far as never telling a bad story. So, no monsters, no spooky creatures. Nevertheless, all children at a certain age fear the dark and are convinced there's a monster under their bed or a monster in their cupboard. You see, we can ignore our dark side, but ignoring doesn't make it go away. We can be all positive and uplifting with our children, but children have fears that were not taught to them. Fears like being afraid in the shower while the parent doesn't understand what's wrong. Only after asking, the child will say something like, "Oh, I'm afraid the drain will going to suck me down into the tube." We laugh about it and label it as cute and fantasy, while in fact the child shows us how separated from reality their fears are. We confirm the good and show the child how to ignore the bad. Later, when we go to school, we will meet with the bullies of our class, in person or not. We all fear to become subject to bullying, and we all want to be on the side of the winner. It's again the dark side of us we do not want to face. Being bullied and feeling constantly less isn't something we want to face. At the same time, we do not see that the bully is acting from the same starting point, the feeling of being less. The bully is compensating this feeling of being less by making himself or herself more and picking a weak person in order to succeed. If we parents and educators could only understand this fully and explain this behavior to the kids and correct it by being a living example, we would not fear this negative behavior, but simply indicate it and deal with it. It's no wonder that children in wealthy countries grew up and thinking the world is a beautiful place. When you ask a 6-year-old what they want to become later in life, most girls want to become a princess, and most boys a fireman, a policeman, or other tough professions that gives them a hero status. Here we see that we teach our children to perceive life as a positive experience and disconnect them from reality. These examples are just a few to illustrate how we are taught to not experience the negative. Later in life, the ignored build-up becomes more extensive, and the fear for the negative, and especially the negative inside ourselves, becomes extensive. We understand that good doesn't exist without bad, but we do not understand the implication of it. If we would only look a moment to really look around us, we could see that while we were occupied with the positive, the negative was playing out in our world. Most of us truly do not understand where all this negative is coming from. They are simply so disconnected from reality and separated themselves extensively. But it's always us. We are responsible. If good doesn't exist without the bad, then it isn't that hard to figure out that as long as we invite the positive in our lives, the negative will manifest somewhere. When the negative manifests somewhere far enough away from our reality, We perceive our private world as good, ideal, and positive. When the negative manifests closer to us, we put our arms in the air while asking why we deserved this misfortune. That's disconnection. It's like hitting your thumb with a hammer and asking who did it. At Destini, we no longer deny the negative. We take fully responsibility. To do so, no subject is a no-go area. All must be discussable, even if some of the subjects give one a bad or an unpleasant feeling. It simply indicates where one still has issues to take on. So instead of blaming and screaming fire, we at Destini see it as an opportunity when we react to subjects or pictures. It's an opportunity to better strengthen or improve ourselves. Subjects as abuse, whether it's child or animal abuse, need to be discussed and understood why we all participate within keeping the abuse in place.